What if I told you that the Saci legend you learned as a child is nothing more than a sanitized version of something far more sinister? That the mischievous one-legged figure in a red cap is actually a carefully constructed mask hiding something that has been claiming victims for centuries? In isolated regions of Brazil's interior, there exists an original version of this entity. One that doesn't play innocent pranks or hide objects. One that marks, stalks, and consumes those who cross its path. This isn't a comforting folklore tale. This is an account based on real disappearances, disturbing testimonies, and events that authorities have never been able to explain. If you're interested in more stories that reveal the dark side of seemingly harmless legends, subscribe to this channel. You're going to need it after what you're about to hear. Because once you know the truth, you can't unhear the whistle. Lucas Mendes was 28 years old when he decided to investigate the Saci legend for his anthropology thesis. He wasn't a believer in the supernatural. He saw folklore as cultural manifestations, psychological projections, nothing more. In early March, he arrived in a small town in the interior of São Paulo state. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where the nearest city is 2 hours away, and where the forest surrounds everything like a dark, breathing wall. The locals were friendly enough during the day. But when Lucas mentioned his research on the Saci, conversations would abruptly end. Doors would close. Eyes would look away. It was Dona Cida, an elderly woman who ran a small general store, who finally spoke to him. She was 83 years old, with hands marked by decades of work and eyes that had seen too much. "You're not the first to come here asking about him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And you won't be the last. But listen carefully, young man. Don't enter the forest after nightfall. And if you hear the whistle, don't respond, don't look, don't stop." Lucas smiled politely. He'd heard similar warnings in every small town he'd visited. Superstitions designed to keep outsiders away, to preserve mystery, to maintain tradition. "What happens if I do?" he asked, more out of academic curiosity than concern. Dona Cida's expression changed. The warmth drained from her face. "Then you'll understand why we don't talk about him." That night, Lucas set up camp near the edge of the forest. He wanted to experience the environment firsthand, to understand why this legend persisted so strongly in this particular region. The forest was dense, prehistoric almost. Trees so thick their canopies blocked out the moonlight. The air was heavy with humidity and the smell of decomposing vegetation. Around 11 p.m., as Lucas was reviewing his notes by flashlight, he heard it. A whistle. Melodic, almost hypnotic. Not quite a tune, but not random either. It had pattern, intention. Lucas grabbed his flashlight and pointed it toward the sound. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating twisted tree trunks and hanging vines. Nothing. The whistle came again. Closer this time. From a different direction. He turned, heart rate increasing slightly despite his rational mind. This time, for just a fraction of a second, he saw something. A silhouette. Small. Contorted. Hopping between the trees. On one leg. Lucas blinked. When he opened his eyes, it was gone. He told himself it was a monkey, a large bird, a trick of the light and shadow. He was a scientist, after all. There were explanations for everything. But sleep didn't come easily that night. And when it did, it was filled with the sound of that whistle, playing on an endless loop in his dreams. The pattern repeated for 3 consecutive nights. Each time, the whistle came closer to his tent. Each time, the silhouette appeared more clearly in the beam of his flashlight. Each time, Lucas found it harder to rationalize what he was seeing. By the 3rd night, he could make out details. The figure was roughly 4 feet tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that bent at wrong angles. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, hopping from branch to branch, from tree to ground, covering distances that should have been impossible. And it was watching him. Lucas could feel its gaze, even in the darkness. A weight pressing against his chest, making it hard to breathe. On the morning of the 4th day, everything changed. Lucas woke up feeling like he hadn't slept at all. His body ached, his mouth was dry, and there was a strange burning sensation on his right foot. When he pulled off his sock, he froze. On the sole of his foot were circular burn marks. 4 of them, arranged in a pattern that looked almost deliberate. The skin was red, blistered, as if something extremely hot had been pressed against it while he slept. But that was impossible. He would have woken up. He would have felt it. Lucas searched his tent frantically. No signs of fire, no hot objects, no explanation. His hands were shaking as he packed up his equipment. He needed to get back to town, to see a doctor, to understand what had happened. The drive felt longer than it should have. The road seemed to stretch, the trees pressing closer on both sides. At the small medical clinic, the doctor was a middle-aged man named Dr. Ferreira. He examined the burns with a professional detachment that lasted exactly 10 seconds. Then his face went pale. "Where did you get these?" His voice had lost all its clinical neutrality. "I don't know. I woke up with them. I was camping near the forest and—" "Get out." "Excuse me? I can't help you. You need to leave." "But I need treatment. I need to understand." Dr. Ferreira stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His hands were trembling. "I said get out. I can't help you. No one can." Lucas left, more disturbed by the doctor's reaction than by the burns themselves. He went back to Donatcida's store. She was sitting behind the counter, and when she saw him limping, her eyes closed slowly. "He marked you," she said, her voice heavy with something that sounded like grief. "What are you talking about?" "Sit down, Lucas. You need to hear this." She told him the truth then. The real story, the one passed down through generations in whispers, never written down, never shared with outsiders. The entity they call the Saci isn't a folklore character. It's something older, something that existed in these forests long before the Portuguese arrived, long before the indigenous tribes gave it a name. When someone hears the whistle 3 nights in a row, Donatcida explained, and they look back, they've acknowledged him, and on the 4th night he marks them. Burn marks on the soles of the feet. Always the right foot. Always 4 marks. Why? What does it mean? Her eyes met his, and he saw genuine fear there. "It means you belong to him now. You have 7 days. Lucas laughed. It was a reflex, a defense mechanism against something his rational mind couldn't process. 7 days until what? Until you disappear, like all the others. She pulled out an old leather-bound journal from beneath the counter. Inside were names, dates, descriptions. Dozens of them spanning decades. All reported the same thing. Unexplained burn marks on their feet. All disappeared exactly 7 days later. The most recent entry was from 2 years ago. A tourist named Rafael Santos, 26 years old. His car was found abandoned on the road leading out of town. Inside was his phone, his wallet, his belongings. But Rafael was never seen again. Lucas felt his mouth go dry. "This is insane. You're telling me a folklore creature is killing people and no one reports it? No investigation, no media coverage. Who would believe it?" Donatcida closed the journal. "And those who try to investigate, well, some of them end up with marks too." That night, back in his hotel room, Lucas tried to make sense of it all. He researched every case he could find online about disappearances in the region. The pattern was there, hidden beneath bureaucratic language and unsolved case files. 17 documented disappearances in the past 30 years. All in or near this town. All within a week of arriving. None ever found. He looked down at his foot. The burns seemed to pulse with a heat of their own. From somewhere outside his window, distant but unmistakable, came the sound of a whistle. It was only day 4. What have you thought about the story so far? Does it match the kind of terror you're looking for? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Lucas didn't sleep that night. Every shadow in his room seemed to move. Every creak of the old building sounded like hopping footsteps. He spent the hours researching for anything that could explain what was happening to him. If there was a pattern, there had to be a way to break it. There had to be. At dawn, he went to the town's Catholic church, a colonial-era building with walls that had stood for over 200 years. Father Miguel was a young priest, maybe 40, who had been assigned to this parish only 3 years ago. But he knew the stories. The church has records, he said hesitantly, leading Lucas to a small archive room in the back. Documents we don't show to most people. They're disturbing. The records dated back to the early 18th century. Letters between priests, reports to the diocese, confessions that were never supposed to leave these walls. And there, in faded ink on yellowed paper, Lucas found the truth. In 1721, Portuguese colonizers who had settled in this region faced a crisis. Their crops failed, their livestock died, and strange illnesses swept through their community. Nothing the priests did helped. No amount of prayer brought relief. Then the indigenous people who still lived in the forest offered a solution. There was something in the forest, they said, something ancient that demanded tribute. If the colonizers wanted to thrive on this land, they would need to make an offering. Pact. Lucas's hands shook as he read the next part. Every 7 years, a child from the settlement would be taken into the forest, left at the boundary. In the morning, the child would be gone, and for the next 7 years, the settlement would prosper. The practice continued for decades. The priests knew. The town leaders knew. Everyone knew, but no one spoke of it openly. Then, in 1789, a new priest arrived. Father Sebastio. He was horrified by what he discovered and immediately ended the practice. He declared the pact broken, called it a sin against God, and forbade any further offerings. The last entry in Father Sebastio's journal was dated exactly 7 days after he broke the pact. He came for me last night. I saw him clearly now. He is not an animal or a demon. He is older than both concepts. He doesn't have one eye because he sees everything. He doesn't have one leg because he is everywhere. I understand now what the indigenous people tried to tell us. We didn't make a pact with him. He simply allowed us to live here, and now that allowance has been revoked. Father Sebastio was never seen again. After that, Father Miguel explained, the pattern changed. The entity no longer waited for offerings. It began choosing its own tributes. The mark is how it claims them. Lucas felt his legs weaken. He sat down heavily on a wooden chair. There has to be a way to stop it, to break the mark. Father Miguel's expression was pained. I've been here 3 years, Lucas. I've watched 2 people disappear. I've read every document in this archive. I've prayed. I've tried every ritual, every blessing. Nothing works. Once you're marked, I'm sorry. Lucas left the church as the sun was setting. Day 5 was ending. As he walked back toward his hotel, he became aware of something that made his blood run cold. The whistle was no longer just at night. He could hear it faintly during the day now, coming from alleys, from empty buildings, from the forest edge. And he was seeing them, shadows that hopped on one leg, always at the periphery of his vision. When he turned to look directly, they were gone. But he knew they were there. Other people in town didn't seem to notice. Or maybe they were deliberately not looking. That evening, Lucas tried to leave. He packed everything, got in his car, and drove toward the highway. But something was wrong. Every road he took, every turn he made, somehow led him back toward the town center. It was impossible. He was following the GPS, he was reading the signs correctly, but the geography itself seemed to have changed. After 2 hours of driving in circles, his car sputtered and died on a dirt road, right at the edge of the forest. The whistle came from all around him now. Not one source, dozens. Lucas ran. He didn't care about his equipment, his research, anything. He just ran back toward the town. Behind him, he could hear hopping. Many feet all moving in rhythm. Hop, hop, hop. He made it back to his hotel room and locked the door. He pushed furniture against it. He checked every window, every possible entry point. It was day 6. He had 1 day left. Thank you for staying with this story until now. You have no idea how much that means. Because what you're about to hear, you won't believe what happens next. Lucas spent the 6th day in a state of deteriorating sanity. The burn marks on his foot had spread, climbing up his ankle in spiral patterns. They didn't hurt anymore. They felt alive. He tried calling the police. The line was disconnected. He tried contacting his university. His phone had no signal. He tried to flag down cars passing through town. They didn't stop. It was as if he had become invisible to anyone not from this place. Donatcita came to visit him at the hotel. She brought food he couldn't eat and water he couldn't drink. "I'm sorry," she said. "I hoped you would leave before the third night. Most outsiders do. But you stayed. You looked back. You acknowledged him. There has to be something," Lucas begged. "Some way to appease it, to negotiate something." She shook her head slowly. "The indigenous people understood. You don't negotiate with the forest. You don't make deals with things that existed before deals were a concept. You either respect the boundaries or you pay the price." She left him with one final piece of advice. "When it comes to night, don't fight it. Fighting only makes it worse. I've seen people try to run, try to hide, try to resist. They're the ones whose bodies we eventually find. Or pieces of them, anyway. But those who accept it, they just disappear. Completely. Maybe that's mercy." Night fell on the 7th day. Lucas sat in his hotel room. Every light turned on. Furniture piled against the door. He had a knife in one hand and his phone recording in the other. If nothing else, he would document what happened. Leave evidence. At exactly midnight, the whistling began. But this time, it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the closet. Lucas's rational mind, already fractured, simply broke. He couldn't move, couldn't scream, could only watch as the closet door slowly opened. The darkness inside was absolute. Not the absence of light, but something darker than darkness itself. A void that hurt to look at. And from that void, slowly something hopped forward. Lucas's phone captured the audio. The video showed only static and impossible angles. But the audio remained clear. His voice, shaking, What are you?" Then silence. Then his voice again, but different. Calmer. Almost peaceful. "I understand now. You're not a legend. You're not a monster. You're what was here first. We're the story. We're the myth. We're what you tell to scare each other in the dark of the forest." Another pause. "You don't have one eye because you see through all of us. You don't have one leg because you are the ground beneath our feet. You are the roots. You are everywhere we walk. I understand. I understand." His voice was fading, as if he was moving away from the phone, deeper into that impossible darkness. The whistle isn't a warning. It's an invitation. It's been an invitation all along. And I. The recording ended there. The hotel owner found Lucas's room the next morning. The door was still locked from the inside. The furniture was undisturbed. But Lucas was gone. His belongings were there. His wallet, his ID, his car keys. But not his phone. That was found later in the forest, placed carefully on a rock at the exact spot where he had first camped. The police investigation concluded he had left voluntarily. Another tourist who came grew bored and moved on. The case was closed within a week. But Donatcita added another entry to her journal. Lucas Mendez, 28 years old. Marked on day 4. Disappeared on day 7. Just like all the others. The story should end there. But it doesn't. Because 2 weeks after Lucas disappeared, hikers found something in the forest. Not a body. Not remains. Footprints. Small footprints hopping on one leg, leading deep into the forest. But there were too many of them. Dozens of trails, all hopping in the same pattern. As if there were more now than there had been before. As if Lucas had joined them. And on quiet nights, people in town report hearing the whistle. But now it's different. Now it sounds like 2 voices. The original and something new. Something that sounds almost human. Almost. The indigenous people had a saying that the colonizers never understood. The missionaries translated it as the hopping one. But the more accurate translation is the one who multiplies by consuming. Every person marked and taken doesn't just disappear. They become part of it. They become another voice in the whistle. Another shadow hopping between the trees. Another one waiting for the next person to look back. If you're ever in the interior of Brazil, in those small towns surrounded by ancient forest, and you hear a whistle at night, don't respond. Don't look. Don't stop. And whatever you do, never acknowledge you heard it. Because the Saci isn't a legend. The legend is that you can escape once he's chosen you. So what do you think? Are legends simply stories we tell to make sense of the unknown? Or are some legends warnings about truths we've chosen to forget? Lucas thought he was researching folklore. He thought he was studying cultural mythology. He never considered that he might become part of the story himself. The question isn't whether you believe this happened. The question is, would you have looked back? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever heard something unexplainable in the forest? Have you ever felt watched by something you couldn't see? If you want more content exploring the dark side of Brazilian folklore and mysteries that defy explanation, subscribe to this channel. And make sure to watch our latest video to continue exploring disturbing mysteries that will keep you awake at night. Because some stories don't end when the video does. Some stories follow you home. And some stories are still choosing their next chapter. The whistle is always out there, waiting, listening, for someone to acknowledge it.